Most fans knew Don Knotts as the lovable, bumbling Barney Fife. But behind that badge and nervous grin was a man who carried heavy secrets. For years, whispers surrounded him, some true, some wildly false. His daughter, Karen, later confirmed the harshest parts of his childhood, while putting to rest one of the most persistent rumors. This is the story of a boy born into fear, who found laughter as his only escape. A story of success so bright, it hid the shadows that never fully left him. And ultimately, a story about the price of making America laugh. Don Knotts was born in 1924 in Morgantown, West Virginia, the youngest of 4 boys. His home was far from warm. His father, paralyzed by illness and gripped by alcoholism, often lashed out with threats, once even waving a knife. His older brothers struggled with their own tempers and drinking, and one died young from asthma. Don's world was one of constant tension. He slept on a cot in the family's kitchen, thin and pale from frailty and fear. "I did not come into the world with a great deal of promise," he once admitted. Those closest to him, later confirmed by his daughter Karen and biographer Daniel Devisay, described a boy haunted by anxiety, already searching for a way out. Amid the chaos at home, Don discovered a private refuge performance. He created little characters, voices, and eventually carved out a partner in the form of a ventriloquist dummy he named Danny. With Danny on his knee, Don could make others laugh while shielding his own fears. Each show for neighbors or classmates gave him a sense of control he never felt in his own house. Instead of being the frightened boy in the corner, he became the entertainer who could transform pain into laughter. It was in those moments that Don realized humor wasn't just a distraction, it was survival. When Don was just 13, his father passed away. The fear that had hung over the household for so long finally lifted. Though the scars remained, for the first time, Don could breathe a little easier. High school brought a new chapter. Though still shy and anxious, he began to stand out, elected class president, writing for the yearbook, even making close friends who saw past his nerves. Outwardly, he seemed to be finding his place. Inside, though, the insecurity lingered, pushing him to polish the comic voice that had become his shield. It was clear Don's path forward would not be built on strength or stature, but on wit, timing, and the ability to turn fear into laughter. When World War II broke out, Don entered the Army, for decades. A rumor followed him that he had served as a tough Marine drill instructor. The truth was different. Don wasn't barking orders on a parade ground. He was in the Pacific, part of a troop called Stars and Gripes, lifting weary soldiers' spirits with comedy routines. He even took on hospital duties when needed, showing the same quiet determination that marked his life. But the real turning point came when he tossed his old ventriloquist dummy, Danny, overboard during the voyage. That act was symbolic. Don was leaving behind the boy who hid behind a wooden partner and stepping fully into his own comic voice. After the war, Don returned home determined to turn comedy into a career. He studied drama at West Virginia University, graduating in 1948, then headed to New York City with barely $100 in his pocket. The city was tough auditions, rejections, and the grind of small roles tested his resolve. He caught his first real break on radio and even landed a spot on a daytime soap. But it was the Broadway hit No Time for Sergeants that changed everything. Sharing the stage with Andy Griffith, Don discovered the role that would define him, the nervous, bumbling sidekick whose awkwardness only made the leading man shine brighter. It was here that Don perfected the jittery, wide-eyed persona that would soon make him unforgettable to millions of viewers. When the Andy Griffith Show launched in 1960, Don knew it was his chance. He suggested the idea of a nervous deputy sheriff to Andy, and Barney Fife was born. The chemistry between the two was instant. Audiences fell in love with Don's jittery energy, the one-bullet holster, and the way he made Mayberry feel alive. But behind the laughter, Don fought private battles. He suffered from crushing anxiety, insomnia, and bouts of depression. Prescription pills once left him dangerously close to overdose, and therapy became a lifeline. Karen Knotts later recalled how her father cycled through deep lows, even as the world saw only his bright grin. On set, he kept up the image of a flawless professional, yet every line, every gag was shaped by an inner storm that never fully went away. By the mid-1960s, Don was at the height of his fame. Barney Fife had won him multiple Emmy Awards and cemented his place in television history. Yet, Don felt restless. From the very beginning, he had promised himself he would stay for only 5 seasons. The grind of weekly television was exhausting, and he longed to try his hand at films. In 1967, he made the tough choice to leave Mayberry. Fans were shocked, and the show was never quite the same without him. Still, Don and Andy remained close friends, and Don would return for guest appearances. But the decision marked a turning point, the end of an era in TV comedy, and the start of a new, uncertain chapter in Don's career. Leaving Mayberry, Don signed a 5-picture deal with Universal. It seemed like the natural next step, Hollywood stardom. He starred in comedies like The Incredible Mr. Limpet, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and The Reluctant Astronaut. Over time, these films became cult favorites, remembered fondly by fans who loved his quirky charm. But in the moment, the gamble didn't pay off as he'd hoped. The movies drew modest box office numbers and lukewarm reviews. Don had left behind the security of the Andy Griffith Show for a big-screen career that never matched the magic of Barney Fife. Still, he kept moving forward, refusing to let setbacks dim the spark that drove him. In 1970, NBC handed Don his own variety program, The Don Knotts Show. On paper, it was a chance to showcase his full range of comedy. But the reality was harsh. He was thrown into a crowded television landscape filled with established hits, and the network couldn't decide what direction the show should take. Producers tried quick fixes, bringing in Bob Sweeney, adding younger talents like Gary Berghoff, mixing in music acts, but nothing quite clicked. Ratings slipped, and after just one season, the show was canceled. For Don, it was a humbling moment. It proved how rare the lightning-in-a-bottle chemistry of the Andy Griffith Show really was, and how hard it was to recreate outside of Mayberry. As the years passed, Don kept working steadily, but privately. He faced a challenge few fans knew about. He was diagnosed with macular degeneration, an eye disease that blurred his central vision. It forced him to give up driving and made simple things like reading difficult. Yet Don never let the condition define him. He found ways to adapt, swimming regularly, leaning on friends for rides, and focusing on what he could still enjoy. Instead of bitterness, he chose gratitude, often telling people he was thankful for the sight he still had. That quiet resilience revealed the same strength that had carried him from a troubled childhood to stardom. By the early 2000s, Don's health began to fail in ways he could no longer hide. Years of smoking had caught up with him, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. Yet even as his body weakened, Don's spirit remained remarkably strong. He continued working in film and television, showing up with the same professionalism that had defined his entire career. On screen, he was still the jittery, lovable man audiences adored. Off screen, he was quietly fighting for time. During these difficult months, one of the most powerful moments came when Andy Griffith visited him in the hospital. The two old friends, who had built their legacies together in Mayberry, sat side by side once again. They didn't talk much about illness or fear. Instead, they did what they had always done best. They laughed. Andy cracked jokes. Don chuckled through the pain. And for a while it was as if they had stepped back into the 1960s, back to the porch of the sheriff's office where everything felt simple. Don's daughter, Karen, later shared one bittersweet memory from those final days. She remembered leaving his room while he and Andy were laughing together, thinking she should give them privacy. Later, she admitted she wished she had stayed, letting her father soak in every bit of joy he could. For Don, laughter had been his weapon, his medicine, and his shield throughout life. In those moments, it was also his comfort as he faced the end. On February 24, 2006, Don Knotts passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 81. The official cause was pulmonary and respiratory complications. True to form, Don had tried to protect his children from the hardest details, even keeping much of his chemotherapy private. To the very end, he met suffering with courage and humor. He left this world not as the frightened boy who once slept on a cot in his family's kitchen, but as one of the most beloved comedians in American television history. Beyond the stage lights and television cameras, Don Knotts led a personal life filled with both joy and turbulence. He was married 3 times. His first marriage to Catherine Metz gave him 2 children, Thomas and Karen, but ended in divorce after 17 years. Later, he married Lauralee Chukna, a union that lasted nearly a decade before fading. Finally, he found companionship again with Frances Yarborough, who remained by his side until his death. His daughter Karen, who went on to become a performer and writer herself, often spoke with pride about her father's legacy, while also being candid about the struggles he faced. Despite the instability in his marriages, Don's devotion to his children never wavered. Friends remembered how he delighted in making them laugh with silly voices and exaggerated faces. the same tools that had carried him through his own childhood fears. Karen would later honor him with her book Tied Up in Knots, sharing the private side of a man millions thought they knew. Recognition of his impact came late but lasting. In January 2000, Don received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, an honor that cemented his place among entertainment legends. Fans gathered as the humble comedian, so often cast as the nervous sidekick, stood proudly in front of his name etched in brass. 16 years later, his hometown of Morgantown, West Virginia, unveiled a life-size bronze statue of him as Barney Fife. There he was, forever frozen in the role that made the world love him, a skinny man in an ill-fitting deputy's uniform, standing tall in the town where his story began. These honors were more than decorations. They were affirmations. They reminded audiences that Don's legacy was not just about laughs, but about resilience. From a boy who survived a violent household to a man who turned fear into a lifelong gift of comedy. His story inspired countless others who felt small, anxious, or overlooked. He proved that vulnerability could be transformed into strength, and that laughter, even born out of pain, could change the world. Don Knotts' journey was never simple. He grew up in fear, battled anxiety his entire life, and carried scars that never fully healed. Yet, through sheer determination and a rare gift for comedy, he turned those struggles into something unforgettable. He gave America Barney Fife, a character so flawed, so human, and so deeply funny that he became timeless. What makes Don's story so powerful is not just the laughter he inspired, but the honesty behind it. The rumors about his past were more than gossip. They were windows into the resilience of a man who refused to be defined by hardship. His life proves that even the most fragile beginnings can blossom into extraordinary legacies. And now, decades later, his impact still ripples. Every time a new generation discovers the Andy Griffith Show, they meet Don Knotts again, nervous, bumbling, and absolutely brilliant. His comedy continues to heal, comfort, and remind us that laughter can be the bravest act of all. So here's our question to you. Which part of Don Knotts' journey moved you most? The fearless humor he brought to Mayberry, or the courage he showed behind the curtain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories of the 1960s legends, secrets, and the moments that shaped an era, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. Because just like Don taught us, even the smallest voices can echo for generations.